I cried, I pleaded with social worker not to take away my only daughter, but they refused to give me a listening ear. Will I ever survive this trauma? I'm Kelvin. I'm a man in my early 30s, based in the United States, and this is the hardest story I've ever had to tell. Thank you for coming to my channel today. Please subscribe, like, and share, so you will always get notifications each time I post new videos. I'm sitting alone right now in my small apartment in Baltimore, the kind of place where the walls are thin and the nights feel longer than they should. Outside my window, I can hear cars passing, distant sirens, the low hum of the city that never really sleeps. The streetlight outside flickers every few seconds, and every time it does, it reminds me of how unstable my life has been for years. I never thought I'd be here, speaking into a microphone, telling strangers about the greatest loss of my life. But maybe this story needs to be told. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it. 7 years ago, they took my only daughter out of my sight. When I say they, I don't mean strangers with masks or criminals breaking into my home in the middle of the night. No, it was much quieter than that. Much colder. It was paperwork, signatures, courtrooms, and people who spoke in calm voices while my world was falling apart. Her name is Lily. Even saying her name out loud still tightens something in my chest. Lily was my heart walking around outside my body. She was the reason I woke up every morning and the reason I kept going even when everything else in my life was falling apart. I became a father young. I was 23 when Lily was born. Her mother, Emily, and I were never perfect, but when Lily came into the world, I believed love would be enough to fix everything. I believed that holding that tiny human in my arms meant nothing bad could ever touch us. I was wrong. Emily and I met in college. She had this laugh that filled up a room, and she always smelled like vanilla and coffee. We were young, reckless, and deeply in love, at least in the way young people think they are. When she got pregnant, fear hit us hard, but so did hope. We promised each other we'd figure it out together. For a while, we did. I remember those early mornings when Lily would cry, and I'd walk her around the apartment, whispering nonsense just to hear her quiet down. I remember the way her tiny fingers wrapped around mine like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. I remember rocking her to sleep while the sun rose through the blinds, thinking, this is it. This is what life is about. But love doesn't survive on good intentions alone. Emily started changing. Or maybe we both did. Sleepless nights turned into arguments. Arguments turned into resentment. She felt trapped. I felt like I was carrying everything on my shoulders. Money was tight. I worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, trying to keep us afloat. She accused me of being absent. I accused her of not understanding the pressure I was under. By the time Lily was 3, our relationship was already cracked beyond repair. The breakup wasn't explosive. It was slow and painful, like watching something you love bleed out while you stand there helpless. We agreed to co-parent. At least, that's what we told ourselves. We wanted Lily to grow up knowing both her parents loved her. But love doesn't always win in court. Emily had support, family money, a lawyer. I had long work hours, exhaustion, and a naive belief that being a good father would be enough. When custody discussions began, I didn't realize I was already losing. They said I wasn't stable enough. They said my work schedule wasn't ideal. They said Lily needed consistency. I remember sitting in that courtroom, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so loud I thought everyone could hear it. I wanted to stand up and scream that I was her father, that I would die for my child, that no schedule or paycheck could measure my love. But the law doesn't care about the way your chest hurts. Emily was granted primary custody. I was given visitation rights. At first, I tried to accept it. I told myself it was better than nothing. I told myself Lily would still know me. I told myself things would be okay. They weren't. Visits became shorter. Excuses became more frequent. Emily moved. Then she moved again. Phone calls went unanswered. Messages were left on read or ignored entirely. Every time I tried to push back, I was reminded of my place. I was made to feel like I was asking for too much when all I wanted was to see my daughter. Then one day, the calls stopped completely. I drove to her last known address. The apartment was empty. The neighbors didn't know where she went. My heart dropped into my stomach. Panic took over. I contacted my lawyer. He told me to be patient, to wait, to follow procedures. Weeks turned into months. Then came the letter. Emily had relocated out of state. Emergency custody orders. New paperwork. More legal language that stripped me of my voice and reduced my role to a footnote. Just like that, Lily was gone. I still remember the night it truly hit me. I was sitting on my bed, staring at her old toys that I'd kept in a box. A stuffed rabbit with one ear slightly torn. A tiny pair of sneakers she outgrew but loved anyway. I broke down in a way I didn't know was possible. The kind of crying where your body gives up before your mind does. I kept asking myself what I did wrong. Years passed, life moved on, but I didn't. I worked. I slept. I repeated the same routine every day, like a ghost haunting his own life. Friends told me to let go, to move forward, to start over. They didn't understand that you don't move on from your child. You just learn how to survive the pain. I dated a little. Nothing serious. Every relationship fell apart the same way. I was emotionally unavailable, stuck in the past, carrying a grief I couldn't explain without killing the mood. Women wanted a future. I was still stuck in a moment 7 years ago. I tried searching for Lily. I hired a private investigator once, but my finances couldn't handle it long term. I searched social media endlessly, typing her name into search bars, looking at photos of children who might be her age now. Every little girl with brown hair made my heart skip a beat. Every resemblance felt like a cruel trick. Birthdays were the hardest. I'd sit alone with a cupcake and light a candle, imagining what she might look like now, what her voice sounded like, whether she still liked bedtime stories, whether she remembered me at all. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. I was walking downtown after work, cutting through an area most people avoid. The streets were rough, the buildings worn down, the air heavy with the smell of rain and old concrete. I usually avoided that route, but something pulled me there that day. Maybe fate, maybe habit, maybe grief had made me careless. I noticed a group of people near the corner, some sitting on the sidewalk, some standing around talking. Homeless, forgotten, invisible to most. And then I saw her. At first, my brain rejected the idea. I told myself it was impossible. Just another kid. Just my imagination playing tricks on me again. But something about her stopped me cold. The way she tilted her head, the shape of her eyes, the small scar near her eyebrow, the same one Lily got when she fell off her bike at 4 years old. My legs felt weak. My heart started racing. Every sound around me faded into a dull roar. She looked thin. Too thin. Her clothes were worn, oversized, like they'd been passed down too many times. Her hair was messy, pulled into a loose ponytail. She was holding a cardboard sign, but she wasn't asking for money. She just stood there, watching the street like she didn't belong to any of it. I crossed the road without thinking. The closer I got, the more terrified I became. What if I was wrong? What if I embarrassed myself? What if this wasn't my daughter? But what if it was? I stopped a few feet away from her. My voice caught in my throat. For a moment I couldn't speak. She looked at me, her eyes guarded, tired in a way no child's eyes should be. "Are you okay?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. She nodded, but it was the kind of nod people give when they don't want to talk. I swallowed hard. My hands trembled. "Can I ask you your name?" She hesitated, looked around, then back at me. "Lily," she said quietly. The world stopped. Everything inside me collapsed at once. Fear, hope, pain, love crashing together so hard, I thought I might pass out right there on the street. That was the moment I found my daughter. After 7 years, standing on the street like the world had forgotten her. And now here I am, sitting in this apartment, asking myself the same question over and over again. What should I do? I don't know how long I stood there staring at her after she said her name. Lily. The sound of it felt unreal, like hearing a voice from a dream after waking up. My knees were weak, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I was terrified that if I moved too fast or said the wrong thing, she would disappear again, like smoke slipping through my fingers. She studied my face carefully, like she was trying to decide whether I was a threat. There was a hardness in her eyes that shouldn't have been there. Children shouldn't look like they're bracing for impact. "My name is Kelvin," I said gently. I think I know you." Her shoulders stiffened immediately. "No, you don't," she replied, defensive, ready to run. I raised my hand slightly, showing her I meant no harm. "You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." She relaxed just a little but didn't step closer. Around us, cars passed. People walked by without looking twice. It amazed me how the most important moment of my life could be happening in the middle of a street, while the world went on like nothing mattered. "How old are you?" I asked. She hesitated. 10. My breath caught. The math lined up too perfectly. My heart screamed yes while my mind begged me to slow down. "Do you know your mom's name?" I asked, careful to keep my voice calm. She frowned. "Why?" "Because I might know her." After a long pause, she said it. "Emily." I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. I turned away for a second, pressing my fingers into my eyes, trying to hold myself together. 7 years of grief surged through me all at once. I wanted to grab her, pull her into my arms, tell her everything. But I knew better. I knew how fragile this moment was. I turned back to her, my voice barely steady. "Lily, do you remember your dad?" She stared at me, confusion written all over her face. Then slowly, almost reluctantly, she nodded. "I remember a man," she said. "He used to read to me. He smelled like soap and coffee." Tears burned my eyes. "That was me," I whispered. Her expression shifted, disbelief mixing with fear. She took a step back. "No. My mom said my dad left. She said he didn't want me." That sentence broke something inside me. "I never left you," I said, shaking my head. "Not for a second. I've been looking for you for years." She looked like she didn't know what to believe. And how could she? Her whole life had been shaped by lies I never got the chance to fight. A man nearby called out to her, telling her to move along. She flinched at the sound of his voice. Another red flag that made my chest tighten. "Who are you with?" I asked softly. She shrugged. "Just people." That answer scared me more than anything else she could have said. I knew I couldn't keep standing there interrogating her. I knew the street wasn't safe. I knew every second mattered. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Her eyes flickered to the sandwich shop across the street. That was all the answer I needed. "I'm not trying to take you anywhere you don't want to go," I said. "But there's a place right there where we can sit and talk. You can leave any time." She studied my face again, searching for something. I don't know what she saw, but after a moment she nodded. Inside the shop, the air was warm and smelled like bread and soup. The contrast from the street felt surreal. I ordered food and watched her eat, like she hadn't had a proper meal in a long time. Every bite made my heart ache. I kept thinking about all the dinners I missed, all the moments stolen from us. We talked slowly, carefully. She told me pieces of her life like she was afraid saying too much would get her in trouble. Emily had struggled, moved from place to place, different men, different states. Things got worse over time. Eventually, Lily ended up running away. She said it was better if I wasn't around, Lily said quietly, staring at her plate. She said I ruined everything. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I wanted to tell her none of that was true. I wanted to tell her she was my entire world, but I didn't want to overwhelm her. Not yet. Lily, I said, I need you to know something. You didn't ruin anything. Ever. She looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was trying to decide if she could afford to believe me. What happens now? She asked. That question terrified me, because I didn't know. I knew calling the police could mean losing her again. I knew taking her home without permission could get me arrested. I knew doing nothing meant leaving my child on the street. I want to keep you safe, I said honestly, but I need to do it the right way. She nodded slowly, though I could tell she didn't trust systems or adults anymore. I took her to my apartment that night. I didn't force her. I asked. She agreed, exhausted and scared. I gave her my bed and slept on the couch. I stayed awake most of the night, listening to her breathe, afraid she'd disappear again if I closed my eyes. The next morning, I called a lawyer. What followed was the hardest fight of my life. Child services got involved. Questions were asked. Backgrounds were checked. Emily couldn't be found. The system moved slowly, painfully slowly, like it always does. Lily stayed in temporary care while they figured things out. Every day without her felt like another punishment I didn't deserve. I visited her as often as I was allowed. I brought books. I brought food. I brought stories from her childhood, pieces of a life she'd been told never existed. Slowly, she started smiling again. The day she finally hugged me without hesitation, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Months passed. One afternoon, the judge looked at me and said the words I'd been dreaming of for 7 years. She will be placed in your care. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just nodded as tears streamed down my face. Now, as I sit here in this apartment, Lily is asleep in the next room. Her room, with her bed, her books, her life slowly starting again. The street light outside still flickers. The city still hums. But everything is different now. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how to fix all the damage that's been done. I don't know how to make up for 7 lost years. But I know this. Love doesn't always win quickly. Sometimes it fights for years. Sometimes it gets knocked down. Sometimes it disappears and comes back broken. But if you don't give up, if you keep loving even when it hurts, sometimes love finds its way home. And this time I'm not letting go. Having Lily in my apartment felt unreal at first, like I was afraid to touch anything in case the moment shattered. The place hadn't changed much over the years. Beige walls, worn couch, the same chipped coffee mug I'd been using since my 20s. But suddenly, everything looked different because she was there. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was fragile. The first few days were awkward. Lily didn't talk much. She moved quietly, like she didn't want to take up space. Every time I walked into a room, she stiffened slightly, not in fear exactly, but in caution. It hurt to see. It told me everything about the life she'd been living. I started paying attention to small things. She flinched when doors closed too loudly. She ate fast, like the food might disappear if she didn't. She asked permission for everything, to use the bathroom, to take a shower, even to sit on the couch. You don't have to ask, I told her gently one evening. This is your home too. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe it yet. At night, I lay awake on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sound from her room. Sometimes I heard her crying softly. I wanted to go in, to hold her, to tell her she was safe now. But I also knew I couldn't force comfort. Trust had to be earned again, slowly. The next weeks were filled with appointments, social workers, therapists, paperwork stacked so high on my kitchen table that I barely had room to eat. Every person we spoke to asked the same questions in different ways, poking at wounds that were still bleeding. Where was the mother? How long was the child unsupervised? Can you provide long-term stability? I answered everything calmly, even when I wanted to scream. I showed them my job records, my apartment lease, my bank statements. I let strangers walk through my home, inspecting it like a hotel room they weren't sure they wanted to book. Through it all, Lily stayed quiet. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting meeting, I found her sitting on the floor in her room, hugging her knees to her chest. The sunlight from the window fell across her face, and for a moment I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who laughed too loudly and asked too many questions. "Hey," I said softly, sitting a few feet away. "You okay?" She shrugged. "I'm sorry," I said, not even sure why, but feeling like I needed to say it anyway. "I know all this is a lot." She didn't respond right away. Then, without looking at me, she said, "Are they going to take me away again?" That question sliced through me. "No," I said immediately. "I won't let that happen." She finally looked up. "They said that before." I swallowed hard. "I know, and I can't change what happened, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away again. But something shifted after that. It wasn't trust yet, more like curiosity, like she was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, this could be real. I started telling her stories, small ones at first, about when she was a baby, about how she used to fall asleep on my chest, about the silly songs I made up just to make her laugh. I didn't tell them all at once. I let them come naturally, like memories finding their way back to the surface. Sometimes she listened. Sometimes she pretended not to care. But I noticed she never asked me to stop. School was another challenge. She hadn't been attending regularly for a long time. The gaps showed. She struggled to read at the level she should have been at. Math made her anxious. She panicked during simple tests. I could see how years of instability had chipped away at her confidence. We sat at the kitchen table every evening doing homework together. Some nights were calm. Other nights ended in tears. Hers, and sometimes mine after she went to bed. "I'm stupid," she said one night, pushing her workbook away. "No," I said firmly. "You're not." "I can't do it," she whispered. "You can," I said. "And even if you can't today, that doesn't mean you never will." She stared at the page like it was her enemy. I sat beside her, not rushing, not pushing, just being there. Eventually, she picked up her pencil again. That night, after she went to sleep, I sat alone in the dark and cried quietly. Not from sadness alone, but from guilt. From knowing how much she'd been forced to carry on her own. Sometimes memories of Emily crept back in, unwanted. I wondered how things had gone so wrong. I wondered when she'd stopped seeing Lily as a blessing and started seeing her as a burden. I tried not to dwell on it, but it was hard not to feel anger bubbling under the surface. Weeks turned into months. Lily started changing. She laughed more. She slept through the night. She stopped asking permission for everything. She started leaving her shoes in the hallway like a normal kid. She argued with me over what to watch on TV. She rolled her eyes when I told bad jokes. All of it felt like progress. But healing isn't a straight line. One night I woke up to screaming. I rushed into her room to find her sitting upright in bed, shaking, tears streaming down her face. She didn't seem to recognize where she was. "No, no, no," she kept saying. "Please don't leave me there." I sat on the edge of the bed and wrapped my arms around her, and this time she didn't pull away. She clung to me like she was afraid I'd disappear if she loosened her grip. "You're safe," I whispered over and over. You're home. I've got you. She cried until her body gave out and she fell asleep in my arms. I stayed there the rest of the night, afraid to move. The next day, the therapist explained trauma to me in ways I hadn't fully understood before. How the body remembers things the mind tries to forget. How safety takes time to feel real. I listened carefully. I learned. I adjusted. I stopped trying to be perfect. I stopped trying to fix everything at once. I focused on consistency, on showing up, on keeping my promises, even the small ones. If I said I'd be home by 6, I was home by 6. If I said we'd go to the park on Saturday, we went. If I said I'd listen, I listened. Slowly, Lily started talking about her life before she found me. She talked about nights spent sleeping in cars, about staying in shelters where she learned not to cry because crying made people angry, about pretending she was older than she was to avoid questions. Each story felt like a punch to the chest. One evening, while we were washing dishes together, she asked me a question I knew was coming eventually. "Why didn't you find me sooner?" I froze. I turned off the tap and took a deep breath. "I tried," I said honestly. "I really did." She frowned. "Then why didn't you?" I knelt down so we were eye level. "Because sometimes the world doesn't work the way it should, and because I didn't have the power I needed back then. But that doesn't mean I stopped loving you, not for one day." She studied my face like she was searching for cracks in my words. "Do you promise?" she asked. "I promise," I said. She nodded, satisfied for now. As time passed, people at work started noticing the change in me. I smiled more. I talked about school projects and weekend plans. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living again. But fear never fully left. Every knock on the door made my heart jump. Every unknown phone number made my stomach twist. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to tell me this was temporary. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Official, heavy. The kind that makes your hands shake before you even open it. Court review. My heart pounded as I read through it. Another evaluation. Another decision. Another moment where someone else got to decide our fate. That night, I sat on the balcony after Lily went to bed. The city spread out in front of me. The lights blurred together as my eyes filled with tears. I thought about the street where I'd found her. I thought about how close I'd come to walking past that corner like everyone else. If I had taken a different route that day, if I had been 5 minutes later, if I had ignored that pull in my chest, I didn't want to imagine the outcome. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing again. I wiped my face and went back inside. Whatever was coming next, I knew one thing. I wasn't the broken man I used to be. I wasn't the powerless father I once was. This time I was ready to fight. The days leading up to the court review were heavy. Every moment felt like it was carrying extra weight, like the air itself was thicker. I tried not to let Lily see how anxious I was, but kids always know. They feel things even when you stay silent. She started sticking closer to me around the apartment. If I went into the kitchen, she followed. If I stepped out to take the trash, she watched from the door. At night, she asked if she could leave her door open. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch watching some old animated movie, she leaned her head against my arm without saying anything. It was a small gesture, but it felt enormous. I didn't move. I barely breathed. I just let the moment exist. That night, after she fell asleep, I went through old photos on my phone. Pictures I'd kept hidden away because they hurt too much to look at. Lily as a toddler, covered in paint, grinning at the camera. Lily on my shoulders at the zoo, her arms stretched out like she was flying. I wondered if she remembered any of it. The morning of the court review came faster than I was ready for. I dressed carefully, like the way you do when you know you're being judged. Clean shirt, pressed pants, shoes polished even though no one would probably notice. Lily sat at the table eating cereal, unusually quiet. "Do I have to go?" she asked softly. "No," I said. "You don't. This is just for adults to talk." She nodded, but her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "They're not going to make me leave, right?" I knelt beside her chair. "No one is making you leave today." She studied my face again, like she always did when she needed reassurance. Then she nodded and went back to eating, though she didn't finish. The courthouse felt cold, even indoors. Long hallways, neutral colors, people sitting on benches with their own quiet disasters folded into their laps. I sat with my lawyer, my hands clasped together so tightly my fingers hurt. When my name was called, my heart jumped. The judge asked questions. The social worker spoke. The therapist gave her assessment. They talked about Lily's progress, her emotional state, her academic improvement. They talked about me, my stability, my involvement, my commitment. I listened, barely breathing. Then the judge looked at me directly. "Mr. Thompson, are you prepared to provide long-term care for your daughter?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Are you willing to continue therapy and monitoring as recommended?" "Yes." "Do you understand the responsibility you're asking to take on?" I swallowed. "I've understood it since the day she was born." There was a pause. Just a moment, but it felt like a lifetime. "We'll continue the placement," the judge said, "with follow-up reviews." Relief hit me so hard, my knees almost gave out. When I got home, Lily was sitting on the floor with her backpack, pretending to organize things that didn't need organizing. She looked up the second I walked in. "How was it?" she asked. I smiled. "You're still home?" She didn't say anything. She just ran into my arms and held on. This time I held her back without fear. Life didn't suddenly become easy after that. If anything, it became more real. School brought new challenges. Lily struggled socially. She didn't know how to trust kids her age. She assumed kindness was temporary and friendships were conditional. Teachers called me in for meetings, gently explaining that Lily often isolated herself or reacted strongly to small conflicts. One afternoon, she came home with a note folded tightly in her hand. "What's that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Nothing." Later that night, after she went to bed, I opened it. She'd been in a fight. I sat on the edge of her bed and waited until she stirred. "Do you want to talk about today?" She turned her face toward the wall. "They said my clothes were ugly." I sighed quietly. Kids can be cruel. "I pushed her," Lily admitted. "I didn't mean to." "I just got so mad." I nodded. "That happens sometimes, but we need to learn better ways to handle it." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "If I mess up, will they take me away?" That fear again. Always that fear. "No," I said firmly. "Making mistakes doesn't make you unlovable. It makes you human." She turned to look at me. "Even big mistakes?" "Yes, even big ones." She nodded slowly, like she was storing those words somewhere important. There were good days, too. We cooked together on Sundays, making a mess of the kitchen and laughing when things went wrong. She started asking questions about my life, my job, my childhood, my favorite music. I played her songs I loved when I was younger, and she pretended to hate them while secretly liking a few. One evening, while we were walking home from the store, she suddenly reached for my hand, just casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Kelvin," she asked. "Yes?" "Can I call you Dad?" The world stopped again. "If you want to," I said carefully. She nodded. "I want to." I turned my face away quickly so she wouldn't see the tears. The nightmares didn't disappear completely. Some nights she still woke up crying. Some days she shut down emotionally without warning. Trauma doesn't leave quietly. It lingers. It tests you. There were moments when I doubted myself, when exhaustion crept in, when I wondered if love alone was enough to undo years of damage. But every time those thoughts appeared, I looked at her and reminded myself that giving up was never an option. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "It's Emily." My stomach dropped. Her voice sounded older, tired, worn down by life. "I heard you found her," she said. "Yes," I replied flatly. There was a pause. I didn't mean for things to get this bad. Anger surged through me, hot and immediate. "But they did. I wasn't okay," she said. "I still am not. But she's better with you." That admission shocked me. "I want to see her," she added quietly. My heart raced. "That's not your decision alone." "I know," she said. "I just thought I should ask." After the call ended, I sat there staring at the wall for a long time. That night, Lily noticed something was off. "Did something happen?" she asked. I hesitated. This was one of those moments where the wrong answer could do real damage. "Your mom called," I said carefully. Her body stiffened. "What did she want?" "She asked how you were." Lily laughed bitterly. "She never cared before. I didn't argue." "How do you feel about her?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't know. Sometimes I miss her. Sometimes I hate her." "That's okay," I said. "You're allowed to feel both." "Is she going to take me away?" she asked. "No," I said immediately. "No one is taking you away." She studied my face, then nodded. "Okay." But I knew that call had changed something. It reopened a wound we'd barely begun to heal. Over the next weeks, Emily tried reaching out again, through lawyers, through messages, always tentative, always uncertain. She wanted supervised visits. I didn't say no right away, not because I trusted her, but because I trusted Lily's right to choose, eventually, when she was ready. The therapist advised caution, slow steps, boundaries. Lily said she didn't want to see her yet, so we waited. Life continued. Days stacked on top of each other, progress mixed with setbacks, love mixed with fear, healing mixed with pain. One evening, while we were sitting on the floor building something out of cardboard boxes, Lily looked up at me and said something that stayed with me. "Dad, I think finding you saved my life." My chest tightened. "No," I said softly. "You saved your own life. I just found my way back to you." She smiled at that, and in that moment I realized something important. This story wasn't just about loss anymore. It wasn't just about heartbreak. It wasn't even just about reunion. It was about rebuilding something from the ashes. It was about learning how to love after being broken. It was about choosing to stay every single day, even when it's hard. And our story wasn't finished yet. Not even close. Time has a strange way of moving when you're rebuilding something that was shattered. Some days flew by so fast I barely noticed them. Other days felt endless, heavy with thoughts I couldn't escape. Lily and I settled into routines, and routines became our quiet form of safety. Every morning I woke her up for school. At first, she hated it. She'd bury her face under the pillow and groan like any normal kid. But after a while, she stopped pretending to be asleep when I opened the door. She started sitting up on her own, rubbing her eyes, asking what day it was. I learned her rhythms. I learned when to talk and when to stay quiet. I learned that she needed music playing softly in the background when she did homework, and that silence made her anxious. I learned she hated peanut butter but loved scrambled eggs. Small details, but they mattered. They made us real. Sometimes, late at night, I caught myself just watching her while she slept. Not in a creepy way, in a terrified way. like I was afraid that if I looked away for too long, she'd vanish again. Trauma doesn't disappear just because things get better. It lingers in the shadows. Emily's request for supervised visits hovered in the background like a storm cloud. The court hadn't made a decision yet. Everyone wanted Lily's input, but no one wanted to pressure her. The therapist suggested writing letters instead of meeting face to face. Lily didn't want to write back. She had years, Lily said one evening, her voice flat. Why now? I didn't have an answer for that. I won't make you do anything you're not ready for, I told her. Ever. She nodded, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. No matter how much pain someone causes, they don't stop being your parent. That kind of bond doesn't disappear cleanly. One night, while we were eating dinner, Lily suddenly asked, "Was she always like that?" I paused. "Like what? Sad," she said. "Angry." I thought carefully before answering. "No, not always." She stared at her plate. "Then what happened?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Sometimes people don't heal from their own pain, and it spills onto everyone around them." She was quiet for a long time after that. At school, things slowly improved. Lily made one friend, just one, but that was enough. Her name was Sarah, a quiet girl who liked drawing and hated loud noises. They sat together at lunch, not saying much, but being close. I noticed Lily started caring more about how she dressed, brushing her hair longer in the mornings. One afternoon, she came home smiling. "We're doing a family tree project," she said. My heart skipped. "Oh, yeah," she said. "I put you." I waited. "And your mom," she hesitated. I left it blank. "That's okay," I said gently. "You can fill it in however you want." She nodded, relieved. That night I found the drawing on the table after she went to bed. Stick figures, crude lines. But I could tell which one was me. She'd drawn my stick figure bigger, standing closer to hers. I sat there for a long time, staring at it. There were setbacks, too. One weekend, she went completely silent. Wouldn't answer questions. Wouldn't make eye contact. Just moved through the apartment like a shadow. I tried not to panic, but my chest tightened with every passing hour. That night I found her sitting in the bathtub, fully clothed, knees pulled to her chest. The water wasn't running. "Hey," I said softly, kneeling beside her. "What's going on?" She didn't respond. I sat there with her, didn't touch her, didn't rush her. After a while she whispered, "I thought you were going to leave." My heart sank. "Why?" "You were late," she said. "You said 6. I checked the clock in my mind. I have been 15 minutes late. "Traffic." "I'm sorry," I said immediately. "I should have called." She nodded, tears sliding down her face. "Everyone who's late leaves." I gently wrapped my arms around her. This time she didn't resist. "I made a mistake," I said, "but I didn't leave. And I won't." She cried quietly into my shoulder until her body relaxed. That night, I realized how fragile trust still was, how easily old fears could be triggered. I set alarms on my phone after that. I overcommunicated. Not because she demanded it, but because she needed it. Emily sent another message through her lawyer. This time she included a handwritten letter. I read it alone. She apologized, not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely in her own broken way. She admitted she'd failed Lily. She admitted she'd been overwhelmed, unstable, scared. She said she'd been getting help now, therapy, support groups, a small apartment of her own. I didn't know what to believe. I showed the letter to Lily and let her read it in her own time. She read it twice. Then she folded it neatly and put it back in the envelope. "I don't hate her," she said quietly, "but I don't trust her." "That's okay," I said. "She wants to see me," Lily added. "Yes," I said, "but only if you want to." She thought about it for days. Then one evening, while we were brushing our teeth side by side in the bathroom mirror, she said, "Maybe someday." I didn't push, I didn't celebrate. I just nodded. Someday was enough. Winter came. Snow dusted the sidewalks. Lily had never really experienced winter properly before. We bought her a coat together. She insisted on picking one that was bright blue. The first time it snowed heavily, she ran outside and spun around, laughing as flakes landed in her hair. I stood in the doorway watching her, my chest full in a way I didn't know how to describe. "Dad," she yelled, "look!" I grabbed my phone and took pictures, knowing I'd treasure them forever. That night we built a snowman outside the building. It leaned slightly to one side, just like everything else in our lives. Imperfect, but standing. One evening, as we were cleaning up dinner, Lily asked, "Do you ever get scared?" "All the time," I said. "Of messing things up," I admitted. "Of hurting you without meaning to. Of losing you again." She nodded thoughtfully. "Me too." We stood there for a moment, connected by our fears instead of hiding them. Months passed. The next court review came and went, continued placement, fewer restrictions, more trust. I started sleeping better. Not perfectly, but better. One night, Lily came into the living room holding a book. "Can you read to me?" I smiled. "Of course." As I read, she slowly leaned against me, her breathing evening out. I kept reading even after I realized she was asleep, my voice steady, my heart full. Later, as I carried her to bed, I thought about the street where I found her, about how close I'd come to never knowing this version of her, about how easily life could have gone in a different direction. There were still hard conversations ahead, still wounds that needed time, still choices that would test us both. But one thing was clear now. This wasn't a temporary chapter. This wasn't borrowed time. This was our life. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving the past. I was building a future. Spring came quietly. The snow melted, the sidewalks cleared, and the city started breathing again. Trees outside our building began to bud, and Lily noticed everything. She always noticed when seasons changed. I think it was because for a long time, she never stayed anywhere long enough to see them. "Does it always come back like this?" she asked one morning, pointing at a tree pushing out new green leaves. "Yeah," I said. "Every year." She nodded slowly. "Even after winter?" "Especially after winter." She didn't say anything else, but I saw her smile to herself. Life began to stretch out in front of us instead of pressing down on us. Mornings weren't rushed with fear anymore. Evenings weren't filled with silence that felt dangerous. We still had hard moments, but they didn't swallow everything whole. Lily started talking more at dinner, about school, about Sarah, about little things that happened during the day that most people wouldn't think twice about. I listened to every word like it mattered, because it did. One evening, she asked me something that caught me off guard. "Why didn't you have another kid?" I paused. "I don't know, I guess. Part of me was still waiting for you." She looked at me, surprised. "Really? Really?" She chewed on that for a bit. "I'm glad you waited." That night I sat alone for a long time after she went to bed. I realized how much of my life had been on pause, without me even knowing it. Not because I couldn't move on, but because my heart never wanted to. Emily reached out again through the therapist. She asked if Lily would be willing to meet her in a supervised setting. No pressure, just an option. I talked to Lily about it over the course of several days. Not all at once. I let the idea sit with her. I answered questions when she asked them. I didn't try to sell her on it. Finally, one night, while we were folding laundry together, she said, "If I do it, will you be there?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Like, really there?" she pressed. "I won't leave the room," I said. "I won't even sit far." She nodded. "Okay, I'll try." The day of the visit was heavy. Lily barely spoke in the car. Her leg bounced nervously the whole drive. I parked, turned off the engine, and looked at her. "We can still turn around," I said. She shook her head. "No, I want to see her face." The room was small and plain. A table, a few chairs. Nothing comforting about it. Emily was already there when we arrived. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. Her eyes carried the same tired weight Lily once had. When she saw Lily, her breath caught. "Hi," Emily said softly. Lily stood still. Didn't move closer. Didn't step back. "Hi," she replied. The silence was thick. "I'm sorry," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." Lily didn't respond. She glanced at me and I nodded slightly, reminding her I was there. "I missed you," Emily added. Lily's jaw tightened. "You left me." Emily flinched. "I know. You said Dad didn't want me," Lily continued, her voice shaking but steady. "That wasn't true." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong. I lied. And I hate myself for it." Lily crossed her arms. "Why?" Emily took a shaky breath. "Because I was scared. Because I felt like I was drowning. And instead of asking for help, I pushed everyone away." Lily was quiet for a long time. "I'm not ready to forgive you," she said finally. Emily nodded. "I understand. But," Lily added, "I don't want to hate you forever." Emily sobbed quietly. The visit didn't last long. But when it ended, Lily looked lighter. Not healed, but relieved. In the car on the way home, she stared out the window. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Tired," she said, "but okay." That was enough. After that, things shifted again. Not dramatically, subtly. Lily seemed more grounded, like a question that had been bothering her finally had an answer, even if it wasn't the one she wanted. She stopped having as many nightmares. She laughed more freely. She argued with me about chores. She started talking about the future. "I think I want to be a vet," she said one night while we watched a documentary about animals. "You'd be great at that," I said. "Or a teacher," she added, "but a nice one." I smiled. "That helps." One afternoon, I got called into the school. My heart jumped, old fear rising again. But this time, it wasn't bad news. "She's doing well," the teacher said. "She's catching up. And she's kinder to herself now." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. As summer approached, Lily asked if we could go on a trip. Nothing big, just somewhere new. "Anywhere," she said. "I just want to go somewhere and come back." So we did. A small beach town, 2 nights, 1 cheap hotel. We walked barefoot in the sand, ate terrible food, and watched the sun set over the water. Lily stood beside me, quiet. "Dad," she said. "Yeah?" "Do you think, if you hadn't found me, I'd still be alive?" My throat tightened. "I don't know," she nodded. "I think about it sometimes." I put my arm around her. "I'm really glad I did." "Me too," she said. That night, as I listened to the ocean through the open window, I thought about love. About how it isn't just romance or happiness or perfect moments. Sometimes love is showing up after everything went wrong. Sometimes it's staying when leaving would be easier. Sometimes it's choosing patience over pride. Back home, life resumed, but it felt different now, fuller, stronger. There were still court dates ahead, still therapy sessions, still questions that didn't have easy answers. But there was also something new, hope. And it wasn't fragile anymore. It was learning how to stand. Summer settled in slowly, bringing longer days and warmer nights. The kind of summer that smells like asphalt after rain and sounds like kids laughing somewhere down the block. Lily changed with the season. She grew more confident, more present. like she was finally allowing herself to believe that this life wasn't temporary. She started leaving little notes around the apartment. Reminders, drawings, jokes she thought were funny. One morning I found a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Don't forget lunch. Love, Lily." I stared at it longer than I probably should have. We started walking more in the evenings. Just the two of us, wandering through the neighborhood as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange and purple. She asked questions about everything. Buildings, people, why some streets felt safer than others, why some people slept outside. "Was that me?" she asked once, pointing at a man curled up near a bus stop. I didn't lie. "It almost was." She nodded, taking that in. "I don't want to forget. I won't let you," I said, "but I also won't let it define you." She seemed satisfied with that. Emily stayed consistent. Therapy, check-ins, letters that were careful, respectful, never demanding. Lily read some of them, ignored others. There was no pressure to decide anything yet, and that helped. One afternoon, Lily came home from school unusually quiet. She dropped her bag by the door and went straight to her room. Old alarms went off in my head, but I didn't rush her. I waited. Later that night, I knocked softly. "Can I come in?" She nodded. She was sitting on her bed, twisting a bracelet around her wrist. "Someone asked me today why I don't live with my mom." I sat beside her. "What did you say?" "I didn't know," she admitted. "I just said she's sick." I nodded. "That's not wrong." "But then they asked where I lived before you," she continued, "and I didn't want to say." "You don't owe anyone your story," I said gently. She looked at me. "What if they find out? What if they treat me different?" "They might," I said honestly. "Some people don't know how to handle pain that isn't theirs." She frowned. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed, "but it doesn't make you less." She leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder. That was new, comfortable, easy. I stayed there until she fell asleep. As the months passed, the court requirements lightened, fewer check-ins, less scrutiny. The word permanent started appearing more often in conversations. It terrified me and comforted me at the same time. One evening, my lawyer called. "Things are moving in your favor," he said. "Very much so." I thanked him and hung up, my hands shaking slightly. I didn't tell Lily yet. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to protect her from hope turning into disappointment. That night I dreamed about the day I found her. The street, the noise, her face when she said her name. I woke up sweating, heart racing, and went to check on her. She was asleep, sprawled across the bed, breathing steadily. I sat on the edge of her bed for a moment, grounding myself in the present. She was here. She was safe. Life threw smaller challenges at us too. Normal ones, parent-teacher meetings, budget worries, arguments over screen time, moments where I snapped out of exhaustion and immediately regretted it. "I'm sorry," I said one night after raising my voice. She looked surprised. "Adults say sorry." I laughed quietly. "Good ones should." She smiled at that. One afternoon, she asked if she could start calling my parents her grandparents. They lived a few states away and had only met her twice so far, but they adored her. "Of course," I said. She practiced saying it out loud a few times, like she wanted to get it right. When my mother heard Lily call her grandma on the phone for the first time, she cried. So did I, quietly, so Lily wouldn't notice. There were moments when the weight of the past crept back in. When Lily asked questions I didn't have answers to, when she struggled with feelings too big for her age. "Why did she choose drugs over me?" she asked once bluntly. I didn't dodge it. "She didn't choose drugs over you. She lost a battle with herself." "That doesn't make it hurt less," Lily said. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." But slowly she stopped blaming herself. That was the biggest change of all. Near the end of summer, Lily brought home a permission slip for a school camping trip. "I want to go," she said quickly, like she was afraid I'd say no. I hesitated, not because I didn't trust her, because I didn't trust the world. "I'll be fine," she said. "Sarah will be there." I nodded. "Okay." The night before the trip, she barely slept. I packed and repacked her bag, slipping in a note without her noticing. On the day she left, she hugged me tightly. "You'll be here when I get back, right?" I smiled. "I'll be right here." She came back glowing, sunburned, tired, full of stories. Something in her had shifted again, confidence blooming in a place that used to hold fear. A week later, the letter came. Finally, my chest tightened as I read it. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. I told Lily that evening. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means they're deciding if you stay here forever." She was quiet. Too quiet. "Do you want that?" I asked gently. She didn't hesitate. "Yes." The hearing was scheduled for the following month. Until then, all we could do was live our lives the way we had been. Steady, honest, loving. One night, sitting on the balcony together, Lily asked, "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I hadn't come back?" I thought about it, about the emptiness, the routine, the quiet pain. "I think I would have existed," I said, "but I wouldn't have lived." She smiled softly and leaned against me. As the days counted down, nerves crept back in, but this time fear didn't rule everything. It shared space with something stronger. Trust, not in the system, not in promises, in us. The weeks leading up to the final hearing felt longer than all the years before it combined, not because things were bad, but because everything mattered now. Every ordinary moment carried extra weight, like the universe was watching closely. Lily seemed to sense it too. She stayed closer again, not out of fear this time, but out of attachment. She talked more about the future, not in big, unrealistic ways, but in small, grounded ones. "What color should we paint my room someday? Can we get a dog when I'm older? Do you think I'll still live here when I'm in high school?" Each question felt like a quiet vote of confidence. The night before the hearing, neither of us slept much. I lay on the couch listening to the city breathe outside our windows. Somewhere below, someone laughed. A train passed in the distance. Life went on, unaware of how fragile my world still felt. Around 2 a.m., Lily padded into the living room carrying her blanket. "Can I sit with you?" she asked. "Always," I said. She curled up beside me, her head resting against my chest. I wrapped an arm around her and felt how solid she was, how real. "What if they say no?" she whispered. I swallowed. "Then I'll keep fighting." She nodded. "I don't want to go anywhere else." "You won't," I said softly. "No matter what happens, I'm your dad. That doesn't change." She relaxed at that and eventually drifted back to sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, praying quietly to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. The morning came too fast. We dressed carefully, both of us. Lily wore a simple dress she'd picked herself. I wore the same suit I'd worn to every hearing before, but this time it felt heavier. Final. At the courthouse, the air felt different, less tense. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe it was the months of proof, the steady record of healing we'd built together. The judge listened. The therapist spoke. The social worker summarized Lily's progress emotionally, academically, socially. They talked about stability, attachment, permanency. Then the judge turned to Lily. "Do you understand why you're here today?" he asked gently. Lily nodded. "Do you feel safe with your father?" he continued. "Yes," she said immediately. "Do you want to continue living with him?" She didn't hesitate. "Forever." Something in the room shifted. The judge looked back at me. Mr. Thompson, please stand. My legs felt weak as I rose. Based on the evidence presented, he said, and the child's clear wishes, the court grants permanent custody to the father. For a moment, I didn't understand what he'd said. Then it hit me. Permanent. Forever. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed the back of the chair to steady myself. Tears blurred my vision. It is the court's opinion, the judge added, that this child has found stability, safety, and love. This placement is no longer temporary. I barely heard the rest. Lily turned to me, her eyes wide. Does that mean? She asked. I knelt in front of her, my voice breaking. It means you're home. She threw her arms around my neck and cried, not the quiet, guarded crying of before, but the loud, relieved sobs of a child who finally felt secure. I held her tightly, not caring who saw. Outside the courthouse, the sky was impossibly blue. The city sounded brighter somehow. Cars passed, people walked by. The world kept moving, unaware that my entire life had just been given back to me. We went out for pancakes afterward, even though it was almost noon. Lily insisted. I want to remember today forever, she said, pouring too much syrup on her plate. So do I replied. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. Healing doesn't work that way. There were still therapy sessions, still difficult conversations, still moments where the past crept up unexpectedly. But something fundamental had changed. Fear no longer ran our lives. Lily started thriving, not just surviving, thriving. She joined a small after-school club. She brought friends home without asking if it was okay first. She argued with me about bedtime like a normal kid. One evening, while doing homework, she suddenly said, I don't feel broken anymore. I froze. What do you mean? I still remember stuff, but it doesn't hurt the same. I nodded slowly. That's healing, she smiled. It feels weird. Good weird? I asked. Yeah, she said. Good weird. Emily stayed in contact, respectfully. Occasional supervised visits, letters, progress of her own. Lily decided when and how much. No pressure, no guilt. One night after a visit, Lily said, I think she loves me. She just didn't know how to take care of me. That can be true, I said. She leaned back on the couch. I'm glad I have you. Those words never stopped hitting me like a wave. As time passed, I started telling my story, quietly at first. To friends, to co-workers, eventually online. Not for sympathy, but for honesty. For fathers who felt powerless. For parents who thought love wasn't enough. People messaged me, shared their own losses, their regrets, their hope. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just a story about losing a child and finding her again. It was a story about love that refuses to die. About showing up even when the system fails. About patience. About forgiveness. About choosing responsibility over resentment. One evening, years later, Lily sat beside me on the balcony, older now, taller, stronger. The city lights shimmered below us. Do you remember the street where you found me? She asked. Yes, I said. I don't, she admitted. But I remember this. She gestured around us, the apartment, the quiet, the safety. That's what matters, I said. She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. I used to think heartbreak meant losing romantic love. I used to think pain was something you got over or around. I was wrong. The deepest heartbreak I ever knew was losing my child while she was still alive. And the greatest love I've ever known is getting the chance to love her again, fully, openly, without fear. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes life takes everything from you not to punish you, but to test how deeply you're willing to love when it costs you everything. I didn't know if I'd survive losing Lily, but I know this now. Finding her didn't just save her life, it saved mine too. And this time I'm not letting go.